In this video, we're going to show you to install ignition coils on your Ford Explorer located on the top side of your engine. With the hood open, we want to go ahead and release the little two retainer buttons here. There's one here on the back side, one over on the top of the throttle body on the driver's side there. When you use our trim tool, you get right in the middle of it. You lift up on that center button there. And when that pulls up, then the bottom half will pull out. I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the driver's side. With both of those out, I'm going to go ahead and remove the cover here. You're going to pull it up over the oil fill tube on the front. Wiggle that up and off and set that aside. I want to go ahead and separate the intake portion from the upper intake plenum. There's a vacuum hose right here. We're going to just pull up on this, separate that. Loosen the hose clamp from the air intake tube to the throttle body. Now if you come on down over here, there's a vacuum tube here going to the intake. There's a little gray clip on it. You're going to push that back and then pull this off, just like so. On the other end of the air intake tube, we're going to locate our other screw clamp here, or hose clamp. I'm going to go ahead and separate this unit and remove it from the vehicle. So go ahead and pull that off of the throttle body. Go ahead and lift this up, twist that off, and set it aside. Disconnect this harness here. There's a little tab on the top. Push down and pull that off. Next one down, there's a green clip on this hose right here. There's two little tabs, top and bottom. You're going to pinch those in together and then push them, and it's going to unlock this unit. We'll be able to slip this off. And on the side of the throttle body, there's an electrical connector. You know, push in on this tab on the side and work that connector off. You want to push on the connector, don't grab the wires and pull on it, and separate that like so. Now this harness itself is attached. There's a little retainer here. We want to go ahead and pop this off and separate it from the intake area. And use our trim tool. Wiggle that up. Now pop the hoses out here. On the back side of the intake, you're going to see a vacuum tube coming up, and there's two retainers here. You can loosen either one, move it. You want to go ahead and separate this from the intake. So I'm going to go for this one here. Slide that clamp back. Then I'm going to use a small 90-degree pick here to just go ahead and loosen up that hose and slide that off like so. Just behind the throttle body, there's another tube right here. Want to go ahead and separate that. I'm going to go ahead and unbolt our intake or upper intake plenum here. There are 7 bolts that secure it. There's one on the right side over here, front, right behind this harness. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Let's go ahead and loosen these using an 8mm socket. These lower 6 bolts are capture bolts, which means once they're loose, you can't pull them out of the intake. However, the 7th bolt here, you can remove. We're going to pull that out, set it aside. Now going between the throttle body and the intake, there's a bolt down inside or underneath. This goes to the intake bracket. It's a support bracket. There's an 8mm bolt underneath. We're going to use our extension to get to that. Loosen that. You reach underneath, grab that bolt. There you have it. Set that aside. Now at this point here, we can go ahead and lift up on this intake. Just kind of manipulate that harness off to the side there. Go ahead and work this up and off. Now once you remove that upper intake plenum, that exposes all of these intake holes here going down into the engine. You want to make sure not to drop anything down inside there. So go ahead, take precautions to cover this. You can use tape, rags, anything you got. Make sure it's clean, free of debris, and cover that. With this cover, we can now focus our attention on the back 3 ignition coils. Underneath these coils are where our spark plugs are located. Let's go ahead and get to those. Now we're going to go ahead and separate our connectors from the ignition coils here. There's a little tab on the top. You're going to press down on that tab. And pull that harness off like so. Now there's an 8mm bolt right there. Go ahead and loosen that. Remove that bolt, set it aside. Now this process that we're doing right now is going to be the same for all of the other ignition coils and spark plugs. We can now go ahead and grab the coil and gently twist it up and pull it up and out. Go ahead and drop your coil down inside, line that up. Go ahead and get your bolt started there. You can just snug that down gently. Once it snugs, you're all set. You don't want to over tighten that. Then take your electrical connector, line that up, and slide that back on. You should feel it and hear it snap into place. Once that's done, we'll install our intake. We want to grab our protective upper cover here, slide that out of the way. Let's go ahead and take some spray solvent, and we're going to clean off the top of the lower intake plenum. Good, wipe this down, and we're ready to install the intake. Now we have our upper intake plenum right here, and here you can see in green the gasket going all the way around. Now these gaskets are normally reusable, so what you can do is just make sure that the gasket itself doesn't have any damage to it, and it's not crushed or as flat as the surface of the intake. You can just run your finger over it and feel that, and ours is still in good condition. We're just going to run a clean towel over this here. We're going to do a visual inspection. Check everything out. Ours looks really good. So at this point here, this is ready to install. Now when we go to install our upper intake plenum, you just want to be careful, make sure that all of your hoses and wire harnesses are out of the way. We want to go ahead and tuck this in. When installing this here, be careful not to catch the gasket on the intake plenum and pull that off. Once you get it lined up, go ahead and start getting the bolts threaded in by hand. Now that we have all of our upper plenum bolts started here, you also want to go ahead and pay attention to the bracket on the back side of our intake manifold that's down on the bottom side. You want to make sure that that mounting tab is lined up. If it isn't, you want to go ahead, before you tighten this down, inspect everything and find out why the intake is not lining up with the bracket on the bottom. There could be something causing resistance. You could have put the intake down on top of the wiring harness, pinching that, anything like that. So make sure everything lines up, as well as that mounting tab in the back. Once we're good there, we can go ahead and snug these down. Now there is going to be a torque sequence for this upper intake plenum, and it is crucial that you torque it down properly. Otherwise you can end up with an intake leak, or worse yet, a cracked intake. We're just going to gently snug down these bolts, and then we'll come back and torque them. Before we torque this, I'm going to go ahead and get the back bolt put on the bracket underneath our throttle body. You want to go ahead and torque this in a specific pattern. You go ahead and follow along on the screen here. We're going to torque this to 7.4 foot-pounds. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Now we're not done yet. We have to do an additional 45 degrees, which is half of a quarter turn. As I'm setting my torque wrench, I'm bringing it over almost straight in front of me here, and then just bring it And that completes the torquing specs for the upper intake plenum. And coming along over here. Let's get our electrode connectors installed. You're going to feel those clip into place. Install this here, push it in, and then push this green clip on. Give it a little tug, make sure that's secured in there. Install the connector on top. On the back side here, we have that vacuum hose. Work that on. I'm just going to grab that clamp, open that up, and slide that hose the rest of the way on. Make sure that the hose is fully seated and the clamp is in the proper position there to secure that. Go ahead and put on that vacuum hose on the top of the throttle body area here. Let's install our air intake tube. You want to make sure that the air intake tube is sealed and seated on the top as well as the bottom. Same thing on the air intake box over here. Install your little vacuum tube here. Simply line that up, push it on. There it is. Just push on, make sure that you hear it clip. And then we have the vacuum hose up on the top here. Line that up, pop that on. Tighten down your hose clamps here. You just want these to be seated firmly. Snug it down, do the same for the other one here. And at this point here, our air intake tube is installed. Let's go ahead and install the upper engine cover here. Going to work this down around our oil fill tube. We're going to install your plastic push pin here. We'll install the other one right over here. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.